Tyler Brooks never expected that one split-second decision on a rainy sidewalk would change everything. The single father was just walking home from his night shift when he saw a woman being attacked. Without thinking, he jumped in to help and took a knife to the ribs. The woman he saved turned out to be Evelyn Langford, one of the most powerful billionaires in the city. When Tyler refused her money, she found another way to help, offering him a job that would give him and his 7-year-old son the stability they desperately needed. But Evelyn's world comes with secrets, and Tyler soon discovers that the attack wasn't random. As their professional relationship turns personal, both must confront their pasts and decide if they can trust each other with their hearts. What really happened that night on the sidewalk? And why was Evelyn walking alone without her usual security detail? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock's shrill cry pierced the darkness at 4 in the morning, same as it had every weekday for the past 3 years. Tyler Brooks rolled out of bed with practiced silence, his body protesting the early hour, but his mind already focused. On the day ahead, the small apartment felt even smaller in the pre-dawn gloom, shadows stretching across worn carpet and second-hand furniture that had seen better decades. He padded quietly to the kitchen, careful not to wake Milo, whose bedroom door remained closed down the narrow hallway. The coffee maker gurgled to life, one of the few appliances that still worked reliably in their modest home. While it brewed, Tyler opened the refrigerator and surveyed their options for breakfast. 2 eggs left, half a loaf of bread, and enough. Milk for Milo's cereal. It would have to do until payday. The broken toy robot sat on the kitchen counter where Milo had left it the night before, its arm hanging by exposed wires. Tyler had promised to fix it, but repair required parts they couldn't afford, and time he didn't have. Still, he picked up the small figure, examining the damage with the careful attention of a father who understood that this wasn't just a toy. It was one of the few things that brought his son joy. "Morning, buddy," Tyler whispered as he gently shook Milo awake at 5:30. The 7-year-old's eyes opened slowly, trust and love shining in their depths despite the early hour. "Is it time for school already?" Milo asked, his voice still thick with sleep. "Not yet. Daddy has to go to work early today, remember? Mrs. Chen will walk you to school." Milo nodded solemnly, understanding more than any child should about adult responsibilities. He dressed himself without complaint, a skill he'd mastered out of necessity. Tyler watched his son's careful movements, feeling the familiar ache in his chest that came with knowing Milo had grown up too fast. They sat together at the small kitchen table, sharing scrambled eggs and toast, while the morning news played softly on their old television. Tyler half listened to reports about corporate mergers and stock prices, a world that might as well have existed on another planet for all the relevance it had to their daily struggles. "Dad," Milo's voice was hesitant, "Tommy's mom is taking him to that new movie this weekend, the one with the robots." Tyler's hand stilled on his coffee cup. He knew what was coming, had heard variations of this conversation countless times. "That sounds fun, buddy. Could we maybe go see it too?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with everything Tyler couldn't provide. Movie tickets, popcorn, the simple pleasure of an afternoon out. Luxuries that other families took for granted, but that stretched their budget beyond breaking. "We'll see," Tyler said gently, hating himself for the non-answer that they both understood meant no. "Maybe we can watch a movie at home this weekend. Make some popcorn on the stove." Milo's face brightened with forced enthusiasm. "Yeah, that'll be even better. We can pause it whenever we want." The resilience in his son's voice broke Tyler's heart. At 7 years old, Milo had already learned to find silver linings in disappointment, to accept less with grace that shamed grown men. It was a strength born of necessity, and Tyler both admired and resented the circumstances that had fostered it. As they finished breakfast, Tyler's mind wandered to Sarah as it often did during these quiet morning moments. His wife had been gone for 3 years now, claimed by a cancer that had fought harder than their insurance coverage. The medical bills had consumed their savings, forced them from their small house into this apartment, and transformed Tyler from a steady construction worker into a man who cleaned office buildings in the dead of night. Sarah would have known what to say to Milo about the movie. She would have found a way to make their home movie night feel like a grand adventure rather than a consolation prize. Tyler did his best, but there were moments when he felt the crushing weight of being both mother and father to a boy who deserved so much more than one overwhelmed parent could provide. "We'd better get going," Tyler said, checking the time on his phone. "Mrs. Chen will be here soon to walk you to school." Milo nodded and gave him a fierce hug that nearly knocked Tyler off balance. "Love you, Dad. Love you too, buddy. Be good at school, okay?" Tyler grabbed his worn work jacket and headed out into the grey morning. The construction job he'd lost after Sarah's death had paid better, but the hours had been irregular, making childcare a constant challenge. The janitorial work at Meridian Office Complex paid less but offered predictable night shifts, while Milo slept. It wasn't ideal, but it kept food on the table and a roof over their heads. The bus ride across town gave Tyler time to think, watching the city wake up around him. Other passengers clutched coffee cups and stared at their phones, most of them dressed for office jobs that paid salaries Tyler could only dream of. He didn't resent them their success, but he sometimes wondered what choices or circumstances had put them in those seats while he headed to clean the buildings where they worked. The Meridian Office Complex towered 30 floors above the downtown business district, its glass and steel facade reflecting the morning sun. Tyler badged in through the service entrance, nodding to the security guard who barely looked up from his newspaper. The overnight cleaning crew was already deep into their routines, the building humming with the quiet efficiency of invisible labor. Tyler's section included floors 15 through 20, executive suites where decisions worth millions of dollars were made during daylight hours. He moved through the spaces with practiced efficiency, emptying trash bins, vacuuming carpets, and wiping down surfaces that would be pristine again by the time their occupants arrived. Sometimes he found himself pausing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over a city that stretched to the horizon. From this height, the problems of street level seemed distant and manageable. Up here, surrounded by the trappings of success and power, it was easy to imagine a different life where $14 movie tickets weren't budget-breaking decisions. But Tyler had learned long ago that wanting a different life and being able to create one were entirely different things. He focused on the work at hand, taking pride in doing it well, even if no one would notice. Every surface he cleaned, every trash bin he emptied, was a step toward making Milo's life a little more stable. His shift supervisor, Marcus Rodriguez, found him around noon as Tyler was finishing the 19th floor. Marcus was a good man, understanding about Tyler's situation and flexible when emergencies arose with Milo. "Brooks, got a minute?" Marcus's tone was casual, but Tyler caught the underlying concern. "Sure. What's up?" "Building management's been asking questions about overtime costs. They're looking to cut expenses." Marcus lowered his voice. "I'm not saying your job's in danger, but they're watching the numbers pretty close these days." Tyler felt his stomach tighten. The overtime hours were what made their budget work, the difference between scraping by and falling behind on rent. "I understand. I'll make sure I'm more efficient." "You're one of my best workers, Tyler. Don't change anything about how you do the job. Just be visible, you know. Make sure they see your value." After Marcus left, Tyler continued his rounds with renewed focus, though his mind raced with calculations. Without overtime, they'd be short on rent. He could look for a second job, but that would mean less time with Milo, more hours of his son being cared for by neighbors and babysitters. The choice between financial stability and being present as a father was one Tyler faced constantly. with no good answers. The afternoon sun was slanting through the office windows when Tyler finally headed home. The bus ride back across town felt longer than usual, his body tired from the physical work and his mind heavy with worry. He'd learned to compartmentalize his concerns, to focus on immediate needs rather than the larger questions that had no easy solutions. Milo was waiting for him when he got home. Homework spread across the kitchen table under Mrs. Chen's watchful eye. The elderly neighbor had been a godsend since Sarah's death, stepping in to help without being asked and refusing Tyler's attempts to pay her for childcare. "How was school, buddy?" Tyler asked, settling into the chair beside his son. "Good. We learned about the solar system. Did you know that Jupiter has more than 70 moons?" Tyler smiled at Milo's enthusiasm. Whatever challenges they faced, his son's curiosity and joy remained intact. "I did not know that." "That's amazing." As they worked through Milo's math homework together, Tyler pushed aside his worries about overtime and budgets. This was what mattered, these moments of connection, the quiet pride he felt watching Milo work through problems with determination, inherited from both his parents. Later, as Milo played quietly in his room and Tyler prepared their simple dinner, he thought about the choices that had brought them to this point. He could have taken the easier path after Sarah's death, accepted his sister's offer to move back to Ohio where family could help with Milo. But this city was where Sarah was buried, where their memories lived, where Milo's friends and school provided stability. Some nights Tyler wondered if he was being selfish, keeping his son in circumstances that were harder than they needed to be. But then Milo would laugh at something on television, or show off a drawing from school, or fall asleep curled against Tyler's side during their weekend movie nights, and Tyler knew they were exactly where they belonged. The broken toy robot, still, sat on the counter, its empty eye sockets seeming to watch Tyler as he moved around the kitchen. Tomorrow, he decided, he'd find time to fix it properly. There had to be a way to make things work, to be the father Milo deserved while keeping their small world stable and safe. Tyler Brooks had no way of knowing that in just a few hours, one moment of instinctive courage would change everything about their carefully constructed life. The rain started falling just as Tyler's shift ended at midnight, a steady drizzle that turned the city streets slick and reflective under the streetlights. He pulled his worn jacket tighter as he stepped out of the Meridian office complex, nodding goodbye to the security guard who was settling in for another long night of monitoring empty hallways. Tyler's body ached in the familiar way that came from hours of physical labor, his lower back protesting the constant bending and lifting, his knees reminding him that he wasn't 25 anymore. The double shift he'd pulled to make up for lost overtime had stretched from his usual 6-hour night into a grueling 10-hour marathon. But the extra money would help cover Milo's upcoming school field trip. The bus stop was 3 blocks away, a walk Tyler had made countless times through neighborhoods that ranged from business district clean to quietly desperate. Tonight, the rain made everything look different, washing the harsh edges off the urban landscape and turning the neon signs into watercolor smears against the darkness. As Tyler walked, his mind wandered to tomorrow's routine. Milo had a doctor's appointment after school, just a routine checkup, but one that would require Tyler to leave work early and lose those precious overtime hours. The math was always tight, a constant balancing act between being the father Milo needed and earning enough to keep their small world stable. The sound reached him first. A woman's voice, sharp with fear, cutting through the steady patter of rain on pavement. Tyler's steps slowed automatically, his senses sharpening as he tried to locate the source. 3 years of night shifts had taught him to be aware of his surroundings, to recognize when something was wrong in the urban darkness. "Please, just take the purse," the voice said, closer now. "I don't want any trouble." Tyler rounded the corner and saw them in the mouth of an alley between 2 office buildings. A woman in an expensive-looking coat backed against a brick wall. facing two men who moved with the predatory confidence of people accustomed to taking what they wanted. Even in the dim light from a distant street lamp, Tyler could see the woman's fear, the way she held herself, as if trying to disappear into the wall behind her. For a split second, Tyler hesitated. This wasn't his neighborhood, wasn't his problem. He had a son at home who needed him, a job he couldn't afford to lose, a life carefully constructed around avoiding exactly this kind of situation. The smart move would be to call the police and keep walking. But the woman looked up then, and Tyler saw her face clearly for the first time. She was older than he'd initially thought, maybe 40, with dark hair now damp from the rain and eyes that held intelligence alongside terror. There was something in her expression, not just fear, but a kind of desperate courage, as if she was trying to talk her way out of a situation that had already moved beyond words. One of the attackers stepped closer, and Tyler saw the glint of metal in his hand, a knife held low but visible, a threat that transformed this from a simple mugging into something potentially deadly. Tyler's body moved before his mind finished processing the decision. 3 years of grief and struggle, of watching his son grow up too fast and accept too little, crystallized into a moment of pure, protective instinct. He'd been helpless to save Sarah from cancer, powerless to shield Milo from the harsh realities of their circumstances, but here was someone he could help. "Hey!" Tyler's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent years supervising construction crews, projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Leave her alone!" The two men turned toward him, their surprise quickly shifting to calculation. Tyler was bigger than either of them individually, but they had weapons and numbers. He could see them weighing their options, deciding whether this new complication was worth fighting or if they should just run. "Walk away, hero," the one with the knife said. "This doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does." Tyler stepped closer, his hands empty but ready. The construction work had kept him strong despite the years of loss and struggle, and he hoped that would be enough. "The lady asked you to leave. I think you should listen." The woman's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. "No, please," she said, and Tyler couldn't tell if she was talking to him or to her attackers. "Just go. Both of you, please just go." But it was too late for walking away. The second man, older and more cautious than his partner, had already made the decision to fight. He lunged forward with surprising speed, forcing Tyler to react instinctively. The muscle memory of 100 construction site scuffles kicked in, and Tyler sidestepped the attack while grabbing for the man's wrist. They went down together on the wet pavement, Tyler's size advantage offset by the other man's desperation and the slick surface beneath them. Tyler heard the woman gasp, heard running footsteps that might have been the other attacker fleeing or approaching. There was no time to look and see. The man beneath Tyler was stronger than he'd expected, wiry and quick, with the kind of lean muscle that came from a hard life on the streets. They rolled across the alley, Tyler trying to control the other man's hands, while avoiding the wild swings aimed at his head. Tyler managed to pin his opponent's knife hand against the concrete, but the victory was short-lived. Pain exploded along his ribs as the second attacker's blade found its mark, sliding between Tyler's jacket and shirt to bite deep into flesh. The shock of it made Tyler gasp, his grip loosening just enough for the first man to break free. "Tyler!" The woman's voice was sharp with alarm, and somewhere in the back of his mind, Tyler wondered how she knew his name. But the thought was lost in the immediate reality of trying to stay conscious as warm blood soaked through his shirt. The sound of sirens cut through the night air, still distant, but approaching fast. The two attackers looked at each other. Some wordless communication passing between them, and then they were gone, disappearing into the maze of alleys and side streets that honeycombed this part of the city. Tyler sat up slowly, one hand pressed against his wounded side, trying to assess the damage. The pain was sharp, but manageable. He'd had worse injuries on construction sites, though none that had bled quite this freely. His jacket was ruined, and he could feel the sticky warmth spreading across his shirt. "Oh God, "You're hurt." The woman was beside him now, her expensive coat forgotten as she knelt on the wet pavement. "We need to get you to a hospital." "I'm okay," Tyler said automatically, the response of someone who'd learned early that admitting weakness was a luxury he couldn't afford, just a scratch. But even as he said it, Tyler could feel his strength ebbing, the adrenaline that had carried him through the fight now leaving him shaky and nauseous. The woman's face was coming in and out of focus, her features blurring at the edges in a way that suggested this was more than just a scratch. "Stay with me," she said, her voice taking on a tone of command that seemed natural to her. "The ambulance is almost here. You're going to be fine." Tyler tried to focus on her face, to ground himself in something solid while the world tilted around him. She was beautiful, he realized, but not in the manufactured way of television or magazines. Hers was a mature beauty, refined by experience and intelligence, marked by laugh lines and the kind of confidence that came from years of making difficult decisions. "What's your name?" she asked, her hand warm against his forehead. "Tyler," he managed. "Tyler Brooks." "I'm Evelyn," she said, and something in her tone suggested this was a significant revelation. Evelyn Langford. The name meant nothing to Tyler, in his current state, though later he would recognize it as belonging to one of the most powerful business leaders in the city. Right now, she was simply the woman he'd tried to help, kneeling beside him in an alley while his blood mixed with rainwater on the concrete. The paramedics arrived in a rush of efficiency and bright lights, their questions cutting through Tyler's. Growing confusion. How was he feeling? Did he know where he was? Could he tell them what had happened? Tyler answered as best he could, but his attention kept drifting to Evelyn, who stood back to give the medical team room to work, but never took her eyes off him. There was something in her expression he couldn't quite read. Gratitude, certainly, but also a kind of puzzled interest, as if he'd done something that didn't quite fit her understanding of how the world worked. As they loaded him onto a stretcher, Tyler's last clear thought was of Milo, sleeping safely in their small apartment with no idea that his father's life had just taken a dramatic turn. Mrs. Chen would find his note in the morning, would take care of getting Milo to school, but Tyler would have some explaining to do when he got home. If he got home. The thought slipped through his defenses as consciousness finally began to fade, leaving him with the image of Evelyn Langford's face and the strange certainty that nothing would ever be quite the same again. Tyler's eyes opened to the antiseptic smell of hospital air and the steady beep of monitors he couldn't see. The ceiling above him was white acoustic tile, water-stained in one corner, and for a moment he couldn't remember how he'd gotten here. Then he tried to sit up, and the sharp pain in his ribs brought everything flooding back. The rain, the alley, the woman with the frightened eyes. "Dad?" Milo's voice was small and worried, coming from somewhere to Tyler's left. "Are you awake?" Tyler turned his head carefully, every movement sending fresh waves of discomfort through his bandaged torso. Milo sat in a plastic chair that was too big for him, his legs swinging nervously above the floor. Mrs. Chen stood behind him, her weathered face creased with concern. "Hey, buddy," Tyler managed, his voice rougher than he'd expected. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at school?" "Mrs. Chen got a call from the hospital," Milo said, climbing carefully onto the edge of the bed. "They said you were hurt. Are you okay? Are you going to die like Mom did?" The last question hit Tyler harder than the knife wound had. He reached out with his good arm and pulled Milo close, feeling his son's small body trembling against him. "No, buddy, I'm not going anywhere, I promise. It's just a cut, and the doctors fixed me up good as new." Over Milo's head, Tyler met Mrs. Chen's eyes and saw his own worry reflected there. She'd been through this before with them, had helped hold their small family together when Sarah's illness had consumed everything else. The unspoken question hung between them. What would happen to Milo if something happened to Tyler? "The doctors say you need to rest," Mrs. Chen said gently. "Milo can stay home from school today, help take care of you when you get discharged." "Discharged?" Tyler tried to process the timeline. "How long have I been here?" "Since last night." Mrs. Chen replied. It's almost noon now. The police want to talk to you when you're feeling up to it. Tyler's mind immediately jumped to practical concerns. He'd missed half a shift, maybe more. Marcus would need to know what had happened. Would need to find coverage for the rest of the week if Tyler couldn't work. The hospital bills would be substantial. Even with the basic insurance his job provided, there would be co-pays and deductibles they couldn't afford. A soft knock at the door interrupted his spiral of worry. A woman in scrubs entered, followed by someone Tyler didn't immediately recognize, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit who looked distinctly uncomfortable in the hospital environment. Mr. Brooks? The nurse checked his chart. I'm Jennifer, your day nurse. This gentleman is from the hospital billing department. He wanted to speak with you about payment options. Tyler's stomach clenched. He'd been through this before during Sarah's illness. The careful conversations about payment plans and financial hardship programs. The shame of it never got easier. The reminder that in America, getting hurt or sick was a luxury he couldn't afford. Mr. Brooks, the billing representative said, consulting his tablet, your emergency surgery and overnight stay will total approximately $14,000. With your insurance covering 80%, your responsibility would be around $2,800. We do offer payment plans. $2,800. Tyler felt the number like a physical blow. That was 2 months of rent, money they simply didn't have. I'll need to see the paperwork, understand exactly. What? Another knock interrupted him, this one more confident than the first. The door opened to reveal a woman Tyler recognized, but couldn't quite place. Elegant, composed, carrying an arrangement of flowers that probably cost more than Tyler made in a week. I'm sorry, she said, noting the crowded room. I can come. Back when you're not busy. Evelyn, Tyler said, the name surfacing from his foggy memories of the previous night. You're Evelyn Langford. The billing representative's eyes widened at the name, and Tyler caught the subtle shift in his posture, from bureaucratic efficiency to something approaching deference. Clearly, Evelyn Langford was someone who commanded respect in this hospital, perhaps in this entire city. Mr. Brooks, she said, stepping into the room with quiet authority. How are you feeling? Like I got stabbed, Tyler said, then immediately regretted the flippancy. This woman had been through trauma too, had probably spent the night reliving those terrifying moments in the alley. I'm sorry, I'm fine. How are you? Are you hurt? I'm perfectly fine, thanks to you. Evelyn's gaze shifted to Milo, who was studying her with the frank curiosity of childhood. And this must be your son. Milo, Tyler said. This is Miss Langford. She's the lady I helped last night. Milo studied Evelyn solemnly. Are you a princess? You look like a princess. Evelyn's serious expression softened into a genuine smile. I'm not a princess, but thank you for the compliment. Your father is a very brave man. I know, Milo said with the simple pride of a child. He's the bravest person in the whole world. Tyler felt his chest tighten with emotion. The billing representative cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the personal nature of the conversation, but unwilling to leave with Evelyn Langford in the room. Ms. Langford, the man said carefully, I was just discussing payment options with Mr. Brooks for his medical expenses. Actually, Evelyn said, her tone taking on a business-like quality, I'd like to cover Mr. Brooks's entire bill. He was injured helping me. It's the least I can do. Tyler's face flushed hot with embarrassment and something that might have been anger. No, absolutely not. Evelyn looked surprised, as if she wasn't accustomed to being refused. Mr. Brooks, you were hurt because of me. It's only fair. It's not fair. It's charity, Tyler said more sharply than he'd intended. Milo looked between them with confusion, picking up on the tension, but not understanding its source. I made my choice. I don't need your money. The billing representative looked like he wanted to disappear. Mrs. Chen stepped forward diplomatically. Perhaps we should let Mr. Brooks rest. The payment discussion can wait. Of course, Evelyn said, though Tyler could see she was taken aback by his rejection. I should let you recover. I just wanted to make sure you were all right, and to thank you properly." She placed the flower arrangement on the nightstand, the blooms filling the sterile room with unexpected color and fragrance. For a moment, Tyler felt bad about his harsh response. She was only trying to help, to show gratitude in the way that probably made sense in her world. "Ms. Langford," he said as she moved toward the door, "I'm glad you're safe. That's all the thanks I need." She paused, studying his face with an intensity that made Tyler uncomfortable. "May I ask you something, Mr. Brooks?" "Sure. Why did you help me? You didn't know who I was, couldn't have known if I was worth the risk." "Why?" Tyler considered the question, aware that Milo was listening, that Mrs. Chen was watching, that his answer mattered more than he fully understood. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because if someone didn't help you and something bad happened, I'd have to live with that." Evelyn nodded slowly, as if his answer confirmed something she'd suspected. "My card," she said, placing a small rectangle of expensive paper on the nightstand beside the flowers. "In case you change your mind about anything." After she left, the billing representative finished his spiel about payment plans with considerably less enthusiasm. Tyler agreed to a monthly installment that would stretch their budget to the breaking point, signed papers that made his financial situation officially precarious, and tried not to think about the elegant simplicity of Evelyn Langford's offer. "Dad," Milo asked when they were finally alone, except for Mrs. Chen, "why didn't you let the pretty lady pay for the hospital?" Tyler pulled his son closer, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo and the faint smell of crayons that always seemed to cling to his clothes. "Because when someone gives you something for nothing, they usually expect something back, and we don't have anything to give." It was a lesson Tyler had learned the hard way, through 3 years of well-meaning offers and charity that came with strings attached. Better to struggle with dignity than to accept help that would cost more than money in the end. But as he drifted off to sleep that afternoon, pain medication making his thoughts fuzzy and disconnected, Tyler found himself thinking about Evelyn Langford's business card and wondering if pride was a luxury he could really afford. The apartment felt smaller when Tyler returned home the next evening, as if the hospital stay had somehow shifted his perspective on the familiar space. Every step sent a dull ache through his bandaged ribs, and the simple act of climbing the stairs to their second-floor unit left him winded and frustrated with his own weakness. Milo hovered nearby, his 7-year-old instincts telling him his father needed help, but unsure what he could actually do. He'd arranged his homework neatly on the kitchen table, and had even attempted to make dinner, a bowl of cereal and a peanut butter sandwich that sat waiting with the earnest pride of a child trying to care for his parent. "Thank you, buddy," Tyler said, settling carefully into his chair. "This looks perfect." Mrs. Chen had left a casserole in the refrigerator with reheating instructions written in her careful handwriting, but Tyler was touched by Milo's effort. They ate together in comfortable silence, the normal rhythm of their evening routine, providing an anchor of normalcy after the chaos of the past day. It wasn't until Milo was safely asleep that Tyler allowed himself to fully confront their situation. He spread the hospital paperwork across the kitchen table, the business card Evelyn Langford had left sitting prominently among the bills, like an elegant white flag of surrender. The payment plan he'd agreed to would add another $300 to their monthly expenses, money they simply didn't have. Even with his overtime hours, their budget had been stretched thin. Without them, which seemed likely given his injury and time away from work, they'd be short on rent within a month. Tyler's phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus. "Hope you're feeling better. Take the time you need to heal. We'll figure out the schedule when you're ready to come back." The kindness in the message only made Tyler feel worse. Marcus was a good supervisor, but he couldn't hold Tyler's position indefinitely. If he couldn't perform the physical demands of the job, and with a fresh stab wound in his ribs, Tyler wasn't sure when he'd be able to lift heavy equipment or spend 8 hours bending and reaching. A knock at the door interrupted his spiral of worry. Tyler glanced at the clock. Nearly 10 p.m. too. Late for Mrs. Chen or any of their neighbors. He moved carefully to the window and peered through the blinds, surprised to see a man in an expensive suit standing on their small porch. "Mr. Brooks?" The man's voice was polite but authoritative when Tyler opened the door. "I'm Robert Harrison from Harrison Investigations. I wonder if I might have a word with you." Tyler's guard went up immediately. In his experience, people in expensive suits who showed up at his door after dark rarely brought good news. "What about?" "It's regarding the incident 2 nights ago. I'm working on behalf of Miss Langford to ensure all the facts are properly documented." Tyler considered refusing. He'd already given his statement to the police, had answered their questions as thoroughly as he could, but something in the man's manner suggested this wasn't a request he could easily dismiss. "Ms. Langford hired you?" Tyler asked, stepping back to let the investigator inside. "Ms. Langford is a prominent public figure," Harrison explained, settling into Tyler's worn armchair with the careful posture of someone accustomed to nicer furniture. "When she's involved in any kind of incident, it's important to have all the details properly investigated." Tyler sat across from him, wincing as the movement pulled at his stitches. "I told the police everything I remember." "I'm sure you did. This is just a precaution." Harrison consulted a small notebook. "You work at the Meridian office complex. Is that correct? Night shift janitor." "That's right. Single father, 1 child, age 7, lost your wife 3 years ago to cancer." The casual recitation of his personal tragedy made Tyler's jaw tighten. What does any of that have to do with what happened in the alley? "Context," Harrison said smoothly. "It helps to understand the full picture. You were walking home from work when you encountered the situation." Tyler answered the questions mechanically, increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Harrison seemed less interested in the details of the attack than in Tyler's background, his financial situation, his relationship with his son. "Have you had any contact with Miss Langford since the incident?" Harrison asked. "She visited me in the hospital. Brought flowers. Did she offer you anything? Money, perhaps?" Tyler hesitated. Something about the question felt like a trap, though he couldn't figure out what kind. "She offered to pay my medical bills. I refused." Harrison made a note. "That must have been difficult. A man in your situation, with mounting expenses and a child to support. What exactly are you suggesting?" Tyler's voice carried a warning edge. "Nothing at all. I'm simply gathering information." Harrison closed his notebook and stood. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Brooks. Miss Langford values what you did for her, and she wants to make sure all aspects of the incident are properly understood." After the investigator left, Tyler sat in his living room feeling violated and confused. The man's questions had made him feel like a suspect rather than a victim, as if his act of courage was somehow suspicious because of his circumstances. Meanwhile, across the city in her penthouse office, Evelyn Langford was conducting her own research into Tyler Brooks. Unlike her investigator's formal approach, Evelyn had turned to the internet, searching for any trace of the man who had risked his life for a stranger. What she found painted a picture that both impressed and saddened her. Tyler Brooks had been a construction foreman before his wife's illness, had owned a small house in a decent neighborhood, had been building what looked like a solid middle-class life. The medical bills from Sarah's cancer treatment had consumed their savings, forced them to sell their home, pushed Tyler into lower-paying work with more reliable hours. There were no criminal records, no history of violence or substance abuse. His neighbors spoke well of him in the few online community forum posts she could find. His son's school had him listed as an involved parent, attending conferences and school events despite his work schedule. The picture that emerged was of a man doing his best under impossible circumstances, maintaining his dignity and his son's well-being through sheer determination. It was a story Evelyn recognized from her company's charitable giving. The working poor, the people who fell through the cracks, not because of poor choices, but because of circumstances beyond their control. But Tyler Brooks was different from the anonymous families her foundation helped. She had looked into his eyes as he bled in that alley, had seen the quiet strength that made him step forward when others would have walked away. There was something about him that challenged her assumptions about heroism and nobility, about what made someone worthy of help. The business card she'd left at the hospital was one small gesture, but Evelyn found herself hoping he would use it. Not because she needed to repay a debt, though she did, but because she suspected Tyler Brooks might be the kind of person whose life was worth investing in. Back in his apartment, Tyler picked up Evelyn's business card and studied the elegant lettering. Evelyn Langford, CEO, Langford Industries. Below it, a phone number and email address embossed in gold. He thought about the investigator's questions, about the mounting bills on his kitchen table, about Milo's quiet acceptance of their limitations. Pride was important, but so was providing for his son. Maybe there was a way to accept help without compromising his principles. Tyler set the card down without making a decision, but he didn't throw it away. Sometimes he was learning the right choice wasn't immediately clear. Sometimes you had to sit with uncertainty until the path forward revealed itself. Outside his window, the city hummed with the quiet energy of late night, and somewhere in its depths, Evelyn Langford was making plans that would change both their lives in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The second hospital bill arrived on a Thursday morning, along with a notice that Tyler's rent was 5 days overdue. He sat at his kitchen table with his coffee growing cold, calculator in hand, trying to make numbers add up to something that resembled financial stability. No matter how he adjusted the figures, they came up short. Milo was at school, blissfully unaware that their small world was teetering on the edge of collapse. Tyler had managed to return to work the previous week, moving more slowly than usual, but determined to show Marcus he could still do the job. The pain in his ribs had faded to a manageable ache, but the medical bills were a wound that wouldn't heal. His phone rang as he was staring at the eviction notice that had arrived with the morning mail. The number was unfamiliar, but something made him answer anyway. "Mr. Brooks, this is Catherine Walsh, Ms. Langford's personal assistant. Ms. Langford would like to schedule a meeting with you, if you're available." Tyler's grip tightened on the phone. "About what?" "She has a business proposition she'd like to discuss. Would this afternoon work for you? Say, 2 o'clock at her office?" Tyler glanced at the papers spread across his table. Bills, notices, the crushing weight of financial reality. What kind of business proposition? "I think it would be better if Ms. Langford explained it herself. The Langford Industries building on 5th Street, 42nd floor. Security will be expecting you." After hanging up, Tyler sat in his quiet apartment and wrestled with his pride. Whatever Evelyn Langford wanted to propose, it was likely another form of charity dressed up as something else. But the eviction notice seemed to mock his principles, reminding him that pride was a luxury he couldn't afford when his son's stability was at stake. The Langford Industries building was everything Tyler had expected and more. Glass and steel reaching toward the sky, marble lobbies that echoed with the sound of expensive shoes, elevators that moved with silent efficiency toward the upper floors where real power lived. The 42nd floor was a study in understated elegance, all clean lines and muted colors that probably cost more per square foot than Tyler made in a year. Catherine Walsh met him at the elevator, a woman in her 50s with the kind of professional competence that ran multinational corporations. "Mr. Brooks, so good to meet you. Ms. Langford is waiting in her office." Evelyn's office occupied a corner of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. She stood as Tyler entered, dressed in a charcoal business suit that somehow managed to be both authoritative and approachable. "Tyler, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." The chairs facing her desk were more comfortable than anything in Tyler's apartment, leather that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Tyler perched on the edge, acutely aware of the gap between their worlds. "Catherine, could you bring us some coffee?" Evelyn asked, then settled into the chair beside Tyler rather than behind her imposing desk. "How are you feeling? Healing well?" "I'm fine," Tyler said automatically. "Your assistant mentioned a business proposition." Evelyn smiled at his directness. "Right to the point. I like that." She leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more serious. "I need to hire someone, Tyler. Someone I can trust completely." "For what?" "Personal security and driver for my son. James is 12 and my current arrangement isn't working out well." Evelyn's voice carried a note of frustration. "The security company I've been using sends different people every few weeks. James doesn't feel comfortable with strangers, and frankly, neither do I." Tyler frowned. "I'm not a trained bodyguard. I clean office buildings. You stepped between me and two armed men without hesitation. You took a knife wound to protect someone you'd never met." Evelyn's eyes were steady on his. "That tells me more about your character than any training certificate could." Catherine returned with coffee in cups that probably cost more than Tyler's weekly grocery budget. Tyler accepted his gratefully, using the moment to process what Evelyn was offering. What would the job involve exactly? Driving James to and from school, staying with him during after-school activities, some weekend events, light security, mostly just being aware of your surroundings, making sure he's safe. Evelyn paused. "The salary would be $80,000 a year, plus health insurance for you and your son." Tyler nearly choked on his coffee. $80,000 was more than twice what he made at the cleaning company. Enough to move them out of their cramped apartment. Enough to give Milo opportunities Tyler had only dreamed of providing. That's too much," he said, "for driving a kid around." "Is it?" Evelyn's tone was matter-of-fact. "James's safety is worth everything to me, and I need someone who understands what it means to be a father, someone who'll care about my son's well-being as much as his security." Tyler set his coffee cup down carefully. "This is charity, expensive charity." "This is business," Evelyn corrected. "I have a problem. I need someone I can trust with my son's life. You have skills I need, courage, integrity, experience as a father. It's a fair exchange." Tyler studied her face, looking for signs of pity or condescension, but found only professional honesty. Still, the offer felt too good to be true, the kind of opportunity that didn't come to people like him. "Why me? You could hire professionals, people with actual training." "Because professionals see a job. You see a child who needs protection." Evelyn's voice softened. "Because when you were bleeding in that alley, you asked if I was hurt. Because you refused my money even when you desperately needed it. Because James deserves someone who'll care about him as a person, not just as a paycheck." Tyler was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Milo's face when he'd asked about the movie, about the broken toy robot still sitting on their kitchen counter, about the eviction notice that made this conversation feel like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. "I'd want to meet him first," Tyler said finally. "Your son. Make sure we get along." Evelyn's smile was radiant. "Of course, would this evening work? You could bring Milo if you'd like. James would enjoy meeting him." As they worked out the details, Tyler felt like he was stepping through a doorway into a completely different life. The practical part of his mind catalogued the benefits: steady income, health insurance, the chance to give Milo stability and opportunities. But another part of him worried about the cost of accepting help, even help disguised as legitimate work. "Tyler," Evelyn said as he prepared to leave, "I know this feels overwhelming, but you saved my life. Let me help you build a better one." "For you and your son," Tyler nodded, not trusting his voice to remain steady. As he rode the elevator down from the 42nd floor, he thought about how quickly life could change, how one moment of courage could open doors he'd never imagined walking through. That evening, as he explained the opportunity to Milo over their simple dinner, Tyler watched his son's eyes widen with excitement and wonder. Maybe, Tyler thought, it was time to stop fighting every offered hand and start believing that sometimes good things happen to good people. The job application lay on his kitchen table that night, signed and ready to be submitted. It represented more than employment. It was a bridge between the life they'd been living and the life they might be able to build together. 3 weeks into his new job, Tyler still felt like he was living someone else's life. The sleek black sedan he drove each morning was worth more than he'd made in 2 years at the cleaning company and the Langford estate where he picked up. James each day looked like something from a magazine about how the other half lived, but it was James himself who had made the transition easier than Tyler had expected. At 12, Evelyn's son carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to privilege, but there was something genuine beneath the polished surface. A loneliness that Tyler recognized from his own childhood, the particular isolation that came from having everything except what mattered most. "Did you really fight off 2 guys to save my mum?" James asked on their 3rd morning together, his backpack properly stowed in the seat beside him as Tyler navigated the morning traffic toward his exclusive private school. "I helped her out of a bad situation," Tyler said carefully. "Sometimes that's what you do when someone needs help." "The other drivers never talk to me," James said, looking out the window at the passing city. "They just put up the partition and play music I can't hear." Tyler glanced in the rearview mirror at the boy's thoughtful face. "Do you want me to put up the partition?" "No." James's response was immediate. "I like talking. Mum says you have a son my age?" "A little younger. Milo's 7. What's he like?" Tyler found himself describing Milo's curiosity, his resilience, his way of finding joy in simple things. James listened with the attention of someone hungry for stories about normal family life, and Tyler began to understand why Evelyn had been so specific about wanting someone who understood what it meant to be a father. The afternoons were easier than Tyler had expected. James's schedule was packed with activities, tennis lessons, tutoring, music practice, but he approached each one with dutiful compliance rather than enthusiasm. Tyler found himself serving as more than just a driver, becoming a quiet-sounding board for a boy who clearly had few adults in his life willing to simply listen. "Tyler," James asked one afternoon as they waited outside his tennis coach's facility, "do you think my mom is lonely?" The question caught Tyler off guard. "What makes you ask that?" "She works all the time. Even when she's home, she's on her phone or her computer. She tries to hide it, but I can tell she's sad sometimes." Tyler chose his words carefully. "Your mom has a lot of responsibilities. Running a big company, taking care of you, that can be isolating. She doesn't date anyone. My friends' parents are always going out or having people over, but Mom just works." James turned in his seat to face Tyler directly. "Do you think she's pretty?" Tyler felt heat rise in his cheeks. "James, that's not really—" "She is, though, right? And she's smart and funny when she's not being all businessy. I don't understand why she's always alone." The conversation stayed with Tyler as he drove James home that evening, as he navigated the tree-lined streets of Evelyn's neighborhood, where houses sat behind gates and manicured lawns. He'd been trying not to think about Evelyn as anything other than his employer, but James's questions forced him to acknowledge what he'd been carefully ignoring. Evelyn was beautiful, but more than that, she was fascinating. During their brief interactions, when she gave him James's schedule, when she asked about her son's day, Tyler caught glimpses of the woman behind the CEO facade. She was funny when she let her guard down, asking about Tyler's own day with genuine interest, sharing small frustrations about business meetings and board presentations. "How's the new job working out?" Mrs. Chen asked that evening, as Tyler and Milo shared dinner in their old apartment. They'd been looking at better places, but Tyler was cautious about making too many changes too quickly. "Good," Tyler said. "Really, good. James is a nice kid, just lonely, I think." "And his mother?" Mrs. Chen's tone was carefully neutral, but Tyler caught the undercurrent of curiosity. "She's been very kind to us. Professional." Milo looked up from his homework spread across the kitchen table. "Can I meet James? You said he likes robots too." Tyler had mentioned James's interest in building complex robots with expensive kits, and Milo had been fascinated by the idea of someone his age with access to such sophisticated toys. Maybe sometime. We'll see. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Evelyn called Tyler directly the next Friday afternoon, her usual composure slightly frayed. "Tyler, I'm so sorry to ask this, but could you possibly stay late tonight? I have a dinner meeting that's running long, and James's babysitter cancelled at the last minute." "Of course," Tyler said. "No problem at all. Would it be terribly inconvenient to bring Milo? I know it's short notice, but I'd feel better knowing James has some company, and I'd love to meet your son properly." An hour later, Tyler found himself walking through the front door of Evelyn's home with Milo beside him, both of them slightly overwhelmed by the scale and elegance of the space. The house was beautiful but warm, filled with family photos and James's artwork, comfortable furniture that invited relaxation rather than intimidated with its expense. James appeared at the top of the curved staircase, his face lighting up when he saw Milo. "You must be Milo. Want to see my robot collection?" The two boys disappeared upstairs in a chatter of excited conversation, leaving Tyler alone in the foyer, feeling slightly out of place. He'd been in the house before, but only briefly, usually waiting in the kitchen while James gathered his things. They seemed to be getting along well. Evelyn's voice came from behind him, and Tyler turned to see her emerging from what looked like a home office. Still dressed in her business attire, but with her hair slightly mussed and her expression tired. "Long day?" Tyler asked. "Endless. Board meetings, budget reviews, a conference call with our Tokyo office that started at 6 this morning." Evelyn kicked off her heels with obvious relief. "I'm sorry to impose on your evening." "It's not an imposition. Milo's been wanting to meet James." They moved into the living room, a space that managed to be both elegant and comfortable, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over a garden that was probably worth more than Tyler's annual salary. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Wine?" Evelyn asked, settling into one of the leather chairs with a sigh. "Coffee would be great." As Evelyn prepared their drinks in a kitchen that looked like something from a cooking show, Tyler found himself studying the family photos that covered one wall. James at various ages, some professional portraits, others candid shots that spoke of genuine love and connection. But no father figure, Tyler noticed, no wedding photos or couple shots. "James's father isn't in the picture," Evelyn said quietly, apparently noticing his observation. "He left when James was 2, said he wasn't ready for the responsibility of a family." "I'm sorry, that must have been difficult. It was devastating at the time. Now I think we're better off." Evelyn handed him a cup of coffee, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. "What about you? Do you ever think about dating again?" Tyler nearly choked on his coffee. No, not really. Milo keeps me pretty busy, and honestly, I can't imagine trying to explain our situation to someone new." "What situation?" "Single father, working multiple jobs just to keep the lights on. Not exactly what most women are looking for in a partner." Evelyn studied his face with an intensity that made Tyler uncomfortable. "You might be surprised. Some women value character over bank accounts." Before Tyler could respond, the sound of laughter erupted from upstairs, followed by Milo's voice calling down excitedly. "Dad, you have to see this robot. It can do backflips." The moment passed, but something had shifted between them. As Tyler and Milo drove home later that evening, Milo chattering about James's impressive toy collection and the pizza they'd ordered. For dinner, Tyler found himself thinking about Evelyn's words and the way she'd looked at him when she'd said them. Back at the Langford house, Evelyn stood at her bedroom window, watching the taillights of Tyler's modest car disappear down her driveway. James had written Tyler a thank-you note in his careful handwriting, already talking about when Milo could visit again. For the first time in years, Evelyn's house felt less like a showcase and more like a home, filled with the sounds of children's laughter and the comfortable presence of a man who saw her as something more than a business transaction. It was a dangerous feeling, she knew, but also one she wasn't quite ready to give up. Tyler first noticed something was wrong on a Tuesday morning when James seemed unusually quiet during their drive to school. The boy, who had become increasingly talkative over the past month, sat hunched in the back seat, staring out the window, with an expression that reminded Tyler uncomfortably of his own son's face during the worst days after Sarah's death. "Everything okay back there?" Tyler asked, adjusting the rearview mirror to get a better look at James. "Mom got some weird phone calls last night," James said quietly. "She tried to hide it, but I could hear her voice through the wall. She sounded scared." Tyler's protective instincts sharpened immediately. "What kind of phone calls?" "I don't know, but she kept saying things like, 'I already told you no, and this conversation is over.' Then I heard her crying after she hung up." The revelation sat heavily in Tyler's chest as he dropped James off at school, watching until the boy disappeared safely through the private academy's security gates. Evelyn had seemed distracted during their brief interaction that morning, her usual composed demeanor showing cracks that Tyler was beginning to recognize as signs of stress. When Tyler picked up James that afternoon, the boy's teacher pulled him aside with a concerned expression. "James seemed quite upset today. Is everything all right at home?" Tyler assured her that he'd speak with Evelyn, but his worry deepened. That evening, after dropping James off at the house, Tyler found himself lingering longer than usual, helping with homework and staying for dinner at Evelyn's insistence. She seemed grateful for the company, though she deflected his careful inquiries about her well-being with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to handling problems alone. It wasn't until the following week that Tyler discovered the truth, and it came from an unexpected source. Detective Sarah Martinez, the police officer who had taken Tyler's statement about the alley attack, called him on his cell phone during James's tennis lesson. "Mr. Brooks, I was wondering if you could come down to the station. There are some things about your case I'd like to discuss with you." Tyler's stomach tightened. "Is something wrong? Did you catch the guys who attacked Ms. Langford?" "It's complicated. Could you come in this afternoon? And Mr. Brooks, you might want to suggest that Ms. Langford come with you." The police station was exactly as depressing as Tyler remembered from his previous visit. All fluorescent lights and worn furniture that had seen too many difficult conversations. Detective Martinez met them in a small conference room, her expression grim as she spread several photographs across the scratched table. "Security footage," she explained, pointing to grainy black-and-white images that showed the alley where Tyler had been stabbed. "From the building across the street. We just got it processed." Evelyn leaned forward, studying the images with growing confusion. "I don't understand. What are we looking at?" "This was taken about 20 minutes before the attack," Martinez said, indicating a timestamp on one of the photos. "Do you recognize this man?" Tyler watched Evelyn's face drain of color as she stared at the image. It showed a well-dressed man standing at the mouth of the alley, apparently talking on a cell phone while watching the street. "Marcus," Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible. "Marcus?" Tyler asked. "My brother." Evelyn's hands were shaking as she picked up the photograph. "But this doesn't make sense. What would he be doing there?" Detective Martinez placed another photo on the table. "This was taken 5 minutes later, your brother meeting with 2 men who matched the description of your attackers." The room seemed to tilt around Tyler as the implications became clear. The attack hadn't been random. Evelyn's own brother had set her up, had arranged for her to be robbed, and possibly worse in that dark alley. Why? Evelyn's voice was hollow, all her usual strength and composure stripped away. "Why would Marcus do this?" "We've been investigating your brother's financial situation," Martinez said gently. "He's accumulated substantial gambling debts with some very dangerous people who don't accept late payments or payment plans." Tyler felt sick. He thought about James's quiet worry, about the phone calls that had scared Evelyn, about how close they'd all come to losing her that night in the alley. "How much does he owe?" Evelyn asked, though Tyler could see she already suspected. The answer would be devastating. "Close to $2 million. to a lone shark operation with ties to organized crime. Martinez leaned forward, her expression serious. Ms. Langford, I need you to understand something. These people don't just walk away when they can't collect. They escalate. What does that mean? Tyler asked, though he feared he already knew. It means they'll go after family members, especially family members with the resources to pay. Martinez looked directly at Evelyn. It means you and your son are in danger. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Tyler's mind raced through everything that had happened since that night in the alley, viewing it all through this new lens of betrayal and ongoing threat. The phone calls, Evelyn said finally. They've been calling me, demanding that I pay. Marcus's debts. I thought they were just scammers, people who'd read about the attack in the news and were trying to take advantage. What exactly did they say? Martinez asked. That I owed them money, that if I didn't pay, they'd make sure I understood the consequences. Evelyn's voice was steady, but Tyler could see the fear in her eyes. I told them I wasn't responsible for my brother's debts. That's not how they see it, Martinez said. To them, you're Marcus's insurance policy, a wealthy sister who can cover his losses. Tyler felt a cold fury building in his chest. Where is Marcus now? We're looking for him. He's disappeared, probably hiding from both his creditors and us. Martinez gathered the photographs. Ms. Langford, I need to ask you something difficult. Are you willing to cooperate with our investigation, help us build a case against these people? Of course, Evelyn said immediately. Whatever you need. It means wearing a wire when they call, recording conversations. It could be dangerous. Tyler spoke before he could stop himself. No, absolutely not. You're not putting her in more danger. Both women looked at him with surprise, and Tyler realized he'd revealed more about his feelings than he'd intended. But he couldn't bring himself to care about maintaining professional boundaries when Evelyn's safety was at stake. Tyler's right, Evelyn said quietly. I have James to think about. I can't risk leaving him without a mother. As they left the police station, Tyler's mind was already shifting into protective mode. His military training, dormant for years, began reasserting itself as he mentally catalogued security vulnerabilities and potential threats. I should resign, he said, as they reached their cars. This changes everything. I can't protect James if I'm not aware of the full situation. No. Evelyn's response was immediate and fierce. Tyler, you're the only person I trust completely. If anything, I need you more now than ever. These aren't random muggers, Evelyn. These are professional criminals who are willing to hurt family members to collect debts. This is way beyond what you hired me for. Evelyn stepped closer, her hand touching his arm. You saved my life once already. That night in the alley, if you hadn't been there, she couldn't finish the sentence. Tyler looked into her eyes and saw not just fear, but trust. Complete, unwavering trust in his ability to protect her and James. It was a responsibility that terrified him and humbled him in equal measure. We need to increase security, he said finally. Professional security, not just me. Whatever you think is best. As Tyler drove home that evening, his mind raced with plans and contingencies. He would need to research the criminal organization they were dealing with, understand their methods and capabilities. He would need to coordinate with Evelyn's existing security team, probably overhaul their entire approach. Most importantly, he would need to keep James and Milo safe while they navigated this dangerous new reality. The thought of either boy being hurt because of adult mistakes and betrayals made Tyler's jaw clench with determination. That night, as he tucked Milo into bed, Tyler made a silent promise. Whatever happened, whatever these people were planning, he wouldn't let them hurt the family he'd grown to love. He'd lost Sarah to circumstances beyond his control, but he wouldn't lose anyone else. Not on his watch. The threatening letter arrived on a Thursday morning, slipped under Evelyn's office door sometime between the night security shift and her arrival at 7 a.m. Catherine found it first, her usual composure cracking as she read the typed message. With hands that trembled slightly. Miss Langford, she said, her voice carefully controlled as Evelyn emerged from the elevator. "There's something you need to see." The letter was brief and to the point. "Your brother's debt is now your debt. $2.2 million, including interest. You have 72 hours to make arrangements, or we start collecting in other ways. We know where your son goes to school." Evelyn read it twice, her face growing paler with each word. The mention of James sent ice through her veins, transforming abstract fear into something immediate and visceral. "Call Tyler," she said, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her. "Tell him to pick up James immediately and bring him here. Then cancel all my meetings for the rest of the day." Tyler arrived within 20 minutes, James beside him looking confused but not yet frightened. Evelyn's relief at seeing them both safe was so profound it nearly brought her to her knees. "What's happening?" James asked, picking up on the tension in the room despite the adults' attempts to appear calm. "We need to have a family meeting," Evelyn said, guiding them into her private conference room. "There are some things you need to know." Tyler listened, as Evelyn explained the situation to James in terms a 12-year-old could understand. Uncle Marcus had made some bad choices. Some dangerous people were angry about money, and they needed to be extra careful for a while. James's questions were thoughtful and mature, revealing a resilience that reminded Tyler of his own son's ability to adapt to difficult circumstances. "So we're like witnesses in those movies?" James asked. "The ones who have to be protected?" "Something like that," Tyler said. "But this isn't a movie, buddy. This is real, which means we all need to take it seriously." After James was settled in the outer office with Catherine, working on homework under the watchful eye of building security, Tyler and Evelyn retreated to her private office to plan their next steps. "I need to tell you something," Tyler said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Something I should have mentioned before, but it never seemed relevant." Evelyn looked up from the legal pad where she'd been making notes. "What? I wasn't always a construction worker. Before that, before I met Sarah, I was in the military, special forces, 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq." The revelation hung in the air between them, recontextualizing everything Evelyn thought. She knew about Tyler's capabilities. Suddenly, his calm competence in the alley made more sense, as did his immediate shift into protective mode when the threats had escalated. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, though her tone held curiosity rather than accusation. "Because it was a different life, a different person." Tyler's jaw tightened. "I got out because I wanted something normal, something peaceful, a family, a regular job, a life that didn't involve weapons and tactical planning. But you remember how to do those things. You don't forget training like that. It's like riding a bicycle, except the bicycle is designed to neutralize threats and protect high-value targets." Evelyn felt a complex mix of relief and apprehension. Relief that Tyler's protection came with professional expertise. Apprehension about what that might mean for the violence that could be heading their way. "What do we do?" she asked. Tyler pulled out his phone and showed her a list he'd been compiling. "First, we need to get both boys somewhere safe, somewhere these people can't reach them. Then we need to coordinate with Detective Martinez and find out exactly what we're dealing with." "Safe how? Safe where?" "I have a friend from my unit, retired, now runs a private security company. He has a secure facility outside the city, designed for exactly this kind of situation." Tyler's voice took on the crisp efficiency of someone accustomed to operational planning. "The boys can stay there with professional protection while we deal with this. I can't send James away. He's already been through enough disruption in his life. Evelyn, they threatened him specifically. These aren't people who make idle threats." Tyler's use of her first name, the dropping of formal boundaries, felt significant in a way that had nothing to do with their current crisis. Evelyn realized that somewhere in the past weeks their relationship had shifted from professional to personal, and the threat they faced was crystallizing feelings she'd been trying to ignore. "What about us?" she asked. "If the boys are safe, what happens to us? We become the bait, Tyler said simply. We make ourselves visible, draw their attention away from James and Milo while the police build their case. That sounds incredibly dangerous. It is, but it's the only way to end this permanently. If we just hide, they'll wait us out. These people are patient when it serves their interests. As they refined their plans over the next several hours, Evelyn found herself studying Tyler with new appreciation. The mild-mannered janitor who had saved her life was revealing layers of competence and strategic thinking that both impressed and attracted her. His transformation from employee to protector, to tactical partner felt natural despite its speed. Tyler, she said as afternoon shadows lengthened across her office, I need you to know something. Whatever happens, whatever risks we're taking, I'm grateful, not just for the protection, but for everything. You've given James something he's never had before, a father figure who puts his well-being first. Tyler's response was interrupted by Catherine's voice over the intercom. Miss Langford, Detective Martinez is here to see you. The detective brought news that was both encouraging and alarming. The police had identified the criminal organization behind Marcus's debts, a sophisticated operation with connections to money laundering and human trafficking. They were dangerous, but they were also under federal investigation, which meant resources were available to protect Evelyn and build a comprehensive case. The good news is that we can probably roll up the entire operation if we do this right, Martinez explained. The bad news is that they're more dangerous than we initially thought. These aren't just loan sharks. They're part of a larger criminal enterprise. What do you need from us? Tyler asked, his military bearing evident in his posture and tone. Martinez studied him with new interest. You have operational experience, special forces, 3 deployments. That changes things. With your background, we might be able to set up something more sophisticated than just wearing a wire. Martinez pulled out a tablet and showed them surveillance photos. We've identified their primary meeting location, but we need someone inside to get actionable intelligence. Tyler and Evelyn exchanged glances. Inside how? Evelyn asked. You go to the meeting they're demanding. Tyler goes with you as security. We wire you both, have backup positioned, and try to get them on record discussing their entire operation. Absolutely not, Tyler said immediately. Too many variables, too much that could go wrong. It's the fastest way to end this, Martinez countered. And with your tactical background, the risk assessment changes significantly. That evening, as they finalized arrangements to move James and Milo to Tyler's friend's secure facility, Evelyn found herself alone with Tyler in her home office. The boys were upstairs packing, their voices carrying down the hallway as James explained his robot collection to an fascinated Milo. Are we crazy to consider this? Evelyn asked, looking at the tactical plans Tyler had sketched out on her whiteboard. Probably, Tyler said, but his smile took the sting out of the admission. But crazy might be our best option. Evelyn moved closer, studying the diagrams and contingencies he'd mapped out with military precision. I keep thinking about that. Night in the alley, how you didn't hesitate to help a stranger. This is different, this isn't a stranger. The simple statement carried weight that had nothing to do with employer-employee relationships. Evelyn turned to face him, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing, how the crisis had stripped away all the careful professional boundaries they'd maintained. Tyler, she said softly, whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that you've changed our lives, both James and mine. We were just existing before, going through the motions. You made us feel like a family again. Tyler's response was to cup her face in his hands, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. Evelyn, the kiss that followed was inevitable, born of shared danger and growing trust, of the recognition that some connections transcend circumstances and social boundaries. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, the air between them charged with possibility and promise. After this is over, Tyler said, his forehead resting against hers, we need to talk about what this means. After this is over, Evelyn agreed. We're going to have all the time in the world. to figure it out. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, unaware that in a mansion overlooking the harbor, two people were preparing to risk everything to protect the family they'd unexpectedly found in each other. The dog tags Tyler had kept hidden beneath. His shirt for years now lay visible against his chest, a reminder of the soldier he'd been and the protector he'd chosen to become again. The attack came at dawn. 3 black SUVs moving up the winding drive toward the Langford estate with the coordinated precision of a military operation. Tyler spotted them from his position at the security station, where he'd been monitoring. The perimeter cameras since 4 a.m., running on coffee and adrenaline. "Contact," he said into his radio, his voice calm despite the spike of tension in his chest. 3 vehicles approaching from the main gate, all units to defensive positions. Evelyn's security team, augmented by Tyler's friend Marcus Williams and 2 other former Special Forces operators, moved with practiced efficiency. They'd spent the previous day fortifying the house, establishing fields of fire, and running through contingency plans that Tyler hoped they wouldn't need. "Where are you?" Evelyn's voice came through his earpiece, tight with controlled fear. "Safe room like we planned," Tyler replied, checking his weapon one final time. "Stay there until I give the all clear, no matter what you hear." Tyler had insisted on the military-grade dog tags he now wore openly, not for sentiment, but for identification in case everything went wrong. His transformation from protective driver to tactical operator was complete, years of civilian life stripped away to reveal the soldier beneath. The first SUV stopped 50 yards from the house, and Tyler counted 8 men emerging with the fluid movements of professionals. These weren't street thugs or desperate amateurs, they were trained operatives, which made the situation both more dangerous and more predictable. "They're going to try to flank us," Tyler murmured into his radio, watching the attackers spread into formation. "Williams, take your team around back. I'll hold the front approach with Rodriguez and Chen." Tyler's military call sign had been Ghost, earned through 3 tours of making the impossible seem routine. Now moving through Evelyn's house with practiced silence, he felt the familiar calm that came with combat operations. This was what he'd been trained for, what his body remembered even after years of peaceful civilian life. The first shots came. Through the front windows, precise but not immediately dangerous, a probe to test their defenses and draw return fire. Tyler held his position, waiting for the attackers to reveal their true strategy. "Movement on the east side," Williams reported. 4 tangos trying to breach the patio doors." "Negative," Tyler replied, studying the tactical display on his tablet. "Let them think they're succeeding. We want them inside where we can control." The engagement. The house's security system had been upgraded beyond civilian standards, with reinforced safe rooms, ballistic glass, and defensive positions Tyler had personally selected. The attackers were walking into a carefully prepared trap. "Tyler," Evelyn's voice was steady despite the circumstances. "There's something you need to know. Marcus is with them. I can see him on the north camera." Tyler's jaw tightened as he switched to the correct monitor. Evelyn's brother stood beside one of the SUVs, talking animatedly with a man in an expensive suit who was clearly in charge. The betrayal was complete. Marcus wasn't just a debtor anymore. He was actively participating in threatening his own sister and nephew. "Copy that," Tyler said, his voice carefully neutral. "Stay in the safe room." The tactical situation developed exactly as Tyler had predicted. The attackers split their forces, with the main group creating a distraction at the front, while a smaller team attempted to breach the rear of the house. Tyler coordinated his defense with the calm precision of someone who'd done this many times before, under much worse conditions. "Contact rear," Williams reported as the sound of breaking glass echoed through the house. 3 tangos in the kitchen. "Engaging." Tyler moved through the house like water, using furniture and architectural features as cover while he maneuvered toward the kitchen. The attackers were good, but they were fighting on ground Tyler had prepared, in a house he'd studied until he knew every angle and approach. The first intruder rounded the corner into Tyler's field of fire, and went down with the quick efficiency of a professional engagement. The second tried to retreat, but found Williams waiting in the hallway behind him. The third surrendered when faced with crossfire from two directions. "Kitchen secure," Tyler reported. "Two down, one in custody." The front assault was more aggressive, but equally unsuccessful. Tyler's security team had prepared overlapping fields of fire that turned the elegant foyer into a killing field for anyone trying to force entry. The attackers' advantage in numbers meant nothing when they were forced into a bottleneck. "Tyler," Rodriguez's voice carried excitement. "The suit guy is calling for retreat. They're pulling back to the vehicles." Tyler moved to a window position where he could observe the withdrawal. The operation had lasted less than 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. His body hummed with the familiar combination of exhaustion and hyper-alertness that followed combat. Marcus was still visible beside the lead SUV, and Tyler could see him arguing with the man in the suit. Even at this distance, Tyler could read the body language. Marcus was scared, desperate, probably realizing that his plan to use his sister's wealth to solve his problems had backfired catastrophically. "Williams, can you get a clean shot on?" "The vehicles," Tyler asked. "Negative. Too much risk of civilian casualties if they return fire toward the house." Tyler made a quick, tactical decision. "All units hold position. Let them go. We have what we need." As the SUVs disappeared down the drive, Tyler felt the familiar post-combat clarity that came with successful operations. They'd protected the house, captured intelligence, and sent a clear message about the cost of threatening Evelyn and James. But he also knew this was just the beginning. The criminal organization behind Marcus's debts wouldn't give up after one failed assault. They'd regroup, change tactics, probably escalate the level of violence they were willing to employ. Tyler keyed his radio one final time. All clear. Threat neutralized. Beginning damage assessment and prisoner processing. Only then did he allow himself to think about Evelyn, waiting in the safe room, trusting him to keep her alive. The dog tags around his neck caught the morning light streaming through the bullet-marked windows, a reminder of the promises he'd made and the responsibilities he'd accepted. The easy part was over. Now came the harder task of ending this threat permanently. The standoff lasted another hour, with Tyler coordinating between Detective Martinez's tactical team and his own security personnel, while Evelyn remained in the safe room. The captured attacker had provided valuable intelligence under questioning, revealing the location of the criminal organization's headquarters and confirming that Marcus had been actively feeding them information about Evelyn's security arrangements. "They're planning something bigger," Martinez reported over the secure radio. "This was just a probe. The real assault comes tonight at the downtown office building." Tyler studied the tactical map spread across Evelyn's dining room table, his mind automatically calculating angles of attack and defensive positions. "They want to draw us out of a fortified position into something they can control. It's a trap," Williams added, his scarred face grim with understanding. "They're counting on us taking the bait." "Then we spring the trap first," Tyler said, his finger tracing routes on the building schematics Martinez had provided. "But we do it our way, with our timing." The plan that emerged was classic military doctrine: use the enemy's expectations against them while maintaining tactical superiority through better intelligence and positioning. Tyler would accompany Evelyn to the demanded meeting, but they'd arrive early with full surveillance and backup positioned throughout the building. As afternoon shadows lengthened across the estate, Tyler found himself checking and rechecking equipment with the methodical precision of someone preparing for a mission that couldn't afford mistakes. The simple wedding ring set he'd purchased that morning sat in his tactical vest pocket, a promise he intended to make if they both survived the next few hours. "You don't have to do this," Evelyn said, emerging from the safe room to find Tyler adjusting his body armor in her hallway mirror. "We could just disappear, take the boys and leave the country." "Running doesn't solve anything," Tyler replied, meeting her eyes in the reflection. "These people won't stop until they're stopped, And Marcus, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Your brother made choices that put you and James in danger. That's not something I can let stand. Evelyn moved closer, her hands helping him adjust the straps of his vest with surprising familiarity. You've done this before. Many times. Different circumstances. Different stakes. Tyler turned to face her directly. I've never had so much to lose before. The admission hung between them, carrying weight that transcended their current danger. Tyler reached into his pocket and pulled out the small velvet box, his hands steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to risk. This probably isn't the right time, he said, but I'm not sure there's ever going to be a perfect moment for people like us. Evelyn's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal two simple gold bands, elegant in their understated perfection. Tyler, I know we haven't known each other long. I know our circumstances are complicated, but I also know that what I feel for you and James isn't something that comes along twice in a lifetime. Tyler's voice was steady, carrying the same calm certainty he brought to tactical planning. Marry me, Evelyn. Let me be the family you and James deserve. Evelyn's answer was interrupted by the sharp crack of gunfire from outside, followed immediately by Williams's voice over the radio. Contact! Marcus Langford approaching the house under a white flag. He's alone, but I've got movement in the tree line. Tyler cursed silently, his proposal moment shattered by the reality of their situation. But Evelyn's hand on his arm stopped him from moving toward his weapon. Yes, she said simply. Yes to everything, to the proposal, to the family, to whatever comes after we get through this. Tyler's kiss was fierce and brief, a promise sealed under impossible circumstances. Then he was moving toward the door, his weapon ready, his mind shifting back into combat mode, even as his heart carried the warmth of Evelyn's acceptance. Marcus stood 50 yards from the front door, his expensive suit wrinkled and his face showing the strain of weeks spent running from consequences. Tyler could see the desperation in Evelyn's brother's posture, the particular kind of fear that came from owing money to people who collected debts with violence. Evelyn, Marcus called out, his voice cracking slightly. I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes, and then this all ends. Tyler's tactical assessment was immediate and grim. Marcus was wired for sound, probably being monitored remotely. The movement Williams had spotted in the trees was almost certainly snipers, positioned to take out Tyler and Evelyn if the conversation didn't go according to plan. He's bait, Tyler murmured into his radio. Classic assassination setup. Williams, can you confirm sniper positions? 2 confirmed, probably more. This is not a negotiation, it's an execution. Tyler made his decision with the cold calculation of someone trained to assess impossible situations. Evelyn, stay inside. This ends now. He moved through the front door with deliberate calm, his weapon visible but not immediately threatening. Marcus's relief at seeing him was genuine, suggesting that Evelyn's brother still believed he could manipulate his way out of the situation he'd created. Tyler, thank God. Tell Evelyn I can fix this. I just need... The sniper's bullet took Marcus in the chest before he could finish the sentence, spinning him around and dropping him to the manicured lawn. Tyler was moving before Marcus hit the ground, zigzagging toward the tree line while calling for backup and medical assistance. The firefight that followed was brief but intense. Tyler's military training reasserted itself completely. Years of civilian softness burned away by the immediate need to neutralize threats and protect the woman he loved. Williams and his team moved with professional efficiency, turning the attacker's ambush into a rout that left 3 dead and 2 captured. Tyler took a bullet in his left shoulder during the final phase of the assault, the impact spinning him around but not dropping him. The pain was familiar, manageable, secondary to the need to ensure that all threats were eliminated. Clear! Williams called out as police sirens wailed in the distance. All tangos down or in custody. Tyler holstered his weapon and moved carefully toward where Marcus lay bleeding but alive on the lawn. Evelyn's brother looked up at him with eyes that held pain, fear, and something that might have been gratitude. "She'll be safe now," Marcus whispered, blood flecking his lips. "She'll be safe," Tyler confirmed, pressing his jacket against Marcus's wound while they waited for paramedics. "But you're going to have to live with what you did to her." As Detective Martinez supervised the crime scene and Tyler received medical attention for his shoulder wound, Evelyn emerged from the house to survey the aftermath of her brother's betrayal. The estate that had been her sanctuary was now marked by violence, but Tyler could see in her face that she understood the necessity of what had happened. "It's over?" she asked, taking Tyler's uninjured hand. "It's over," Tyler confirmed, the simple wedding rings in his vest pocket, a promise of the new beginning they could finally plan together. 1 year later, Tyler Brooks Langford stood in the kitchen of their new home, watching through the window as James and Milo raced across the backyard with the carefree energy of brothers who had forgotten they hadn't always been family. The house was smaller than Evelyn's estate, larger than Tyler's old apartment, a perfect compromise that reflected their blended life. "Coffee's ready," Evelyn said, wrapping her arms around Tyler's waist from behind, the simple gold band on. Her finger caught the morning light, still new enough to make Tyler smile whenever he noticed it. "They're going to wear themselves out before school," Tyler observed, accepting the mug she offered. "Milo's convinced he can teach James to climb the oak tree. James needs to learn that not everything requires a strategic plan," Evelyn laughed. "Your son's teaching him to be spontaneous." "Our son," Tyler corrected gently, a distinction that had become natural over the months since their quiet wedding. "Both our sons." The ceremony had been simple, held in the garden behind their new house with just Mrs. Chen, Detective Martinez, and Tyler's friend Williams as witnesses. James had served as ring-bearer with solemn pride, while Milo had provided commentary throughout the vows that made everyone laugh despite the tears. Tyler's new role as head of security for Langford Industries had proven to be more than just a professional position. It was a partnership that leveraged his military expertise and Evelyn's business acumen. Together, they'd developed security protocols that other companies were beginning to adopt, turning Tyler's protective instincts into a growing consulting business. "The community center dedication is next month," Evelyn said, settling beside Tyler at their kitchen table. "The mayor wants us both there for the ribbon cutting." Tyler nodded, still amazed by how naturally Evelyn had embraced his vision for helping other single fathers navigate the challenges he'd faced. The Brooks Langford Community Center would offer job training, childcare, and support services for families struggling to build stability in an uncertain economy. "Mrs. Rodriguez called yesterday," Evelyn continued. "3 more fathers have enrolled in the job placement program, including one who heard about us from his night shift supervisor at Meridian." The irony wasn't lost on Tyler that his old workplace had become a recruiting ground for families who needed the same kind of help he'd once been too proud to accept. Marcus Rodriguez, his former supervisor, had become an unofficial ambassador for their programs, identifying men who were working multiple jobs to support their children. "Any word from Marcus?" Tyler asked, referring to Evelyn's brother rather than his former boss. "His lawyer says he's doing well in minimum security. The counseling program is helping with his gambling addiction." Evelyn's voice carried complicated emotions, forgiveness mixed with caution, love tempered by the memory of betrayal. "He wants to write a letter to James." Tyler considered this carefully. Marcus's cooperation with federal investigators had resulted in a lighter sentence, and his genuine remorse seemed authentic. But James's well-being remained Tyler's primary concern. What does James think? He's curious about his uncle, but not eager to rebuild a relationship. He says he has all the family he needs now. Through the window, Tyler watched James help Milo reach a higher branch, both boys working together with the easy cooperation that had developed naturally between them. James had blossomed under Tyler's steady presence, his academic performance improving along with his confidence. Milo, meanwhile, had gained the older brother he'd never known he wanted, someone who shared his love of building things, but had the resources to turn imagination into reality. "Tyler," Evelyn said softly, "do you ever think about that night? About what would have happened if you'd just kept walking?" Tyler turned the question over in his mind, as he had many times during quiet moments over the past year. "I think about it, but not with regret. Even knowing everything that followed, the danger, the violence, the complications, especially knowing everything that followed." Tyler reached for her hand, thumb tracing the wedding ring that symbolized promises made and kept. "That night I was walking home to an empty apartment, worried about bills I couldn't pay, wondering how I was going to give Milo the life he deserved. And now I wake up every morning next to the woman I love, in a house filled with laughter, with 2 sons who are growing up to be good men. Now I have work that matters, a family that's stronger together than any of us were apart." Evelyn leaned against his shoulder, both of them watching their boys play in the security of a backyard where the biggest danger was grass stains and scraped knees. "The Foundation wants to fund similar programs in other cities," she said. "Detroit, Phoenix, maybe Atlanta. They're calling it the Brooks Initiative." Tyler felt a familiar mix of pride and humility. His name attached to programs that helped struggling fathers felt both natural and surreal, like recognition for simply doing what needed to be done. "Speaking of initiatives," Evelyn said with a smile that Tyler had learned to recognize as dangerous, "I had an interesting conversation with Dr. Martinez yesterday." "Dr. Martinez? Our family doctor, the one who's been monitoring my health since we started talking about expanding our family." Tyler's coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips. "Expanding? Well, James and Milo keep asking about little sisters, and Dr. Martinez thinks I'm in excellent health for having another baby." The possibility hung between them like a gift neither had dared to hope for. Tyler had assumed that their blended family was complete, that the happiness they'd found was already more than he'd had any right to expect. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying that sometimes the best things in life come when you're not looking for them, when you're just trying to do the right thing and trust that everything else will work out." As if summoned by their conversation, James and Milo burst through the back door, grass-stained and breathless, talking over each other about tree-climbing techniques and plans for a treehouse that would require Tyler's construction expertise. "Dad," Milo said, using the title that still made Tyler's heart swell, "James thinks we need a rope ladder, but I think regular stairs would be safer." "Dad," James added, his adoption of the name as natural as breathing, "we could build it big enough for a little sister to use when she's older." Tyler and Evelyn exchanged glances over the boys' heads, surprised by their intuitive understanding of possibilities that hadn't yet been spoken aloud. "We'll see," Tyler said, pulling both boys into a hug that smelled of sunshine and childhood adventures. "First, you 2 need showers and breakfast, or you'll be late for school." As the boys raced upstairs, arguing about who got the bathroom first, Tyler found himself thinking about the broken toy robot that had once sat on his kitchen counter, representing everything he couldn't provide for his son. Now, their home was filled with toys and books and the comfortable chaos of a family that had grown organically from love and commitment rather than obligation. "Do you ever regret that night?" Evelyn asked again, her hand finding his across the table. Tyler looked around their kitchen, listened to the sound of his son's laughter echoing from upstairs, felt the weight of Evelyn's wedding ring against his palm and smiled. "Never," he said simply. "It brought me to my real life." Outside their window, the city was waking up to another ordinary day, full of people making choices that would ripple forward in ways they couldn't imagine. Somewhere in its depths, another single father was walking home from work. Another family was struggling to build something stable from the pieces of their circumstances. Tyler Brooks Langford had learned that heroism wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It was about stepping forward when someone needed help, about building something better from whatever materials life provided. about believing that sometimes the right choice led to rewards you never dared to dream of. The family photo on their refrigerator captured all four of them together, laughing at something Milo had said during the shoot. It was a perfect image of an imperfect family that had found its way to happiness through courage, commitment, and the simple recognition that some things were worth fighting for. As Tyler prepared for another day of work that mattered, in a life filled with people he loved, he carried with him the quiet satisfaction of a man who had discovered that sometimes the best things in life really did come to those brave enough to step forward when it mattered most.